Hi, friends. Lauren here. I want to wish you a very, very happy and healthy and prosperous new year. This week, we are running an encore presentation with Chef AJ, one of our very favorite guests. And I believe that she's one of yours too. She's going to be talking about lasting weight loss through calorie density. And if you don't know Chef AJ, get ready. She is truly an interesting person. She talks about her traumatic childhood that resulted in her living with an aunt who was a Cordon Bleu chef. And that really changed the trajectory of her life. And that's how she became the chef that we know and love. So give a listen, and we will be back in February. Take care, friends. Hi, friends. I'm Lauren Bernick, and I'm flipping the script about growing older. My guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing. Welcome to the Anti-Aging Podcast. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. Abby J, or Chef AJ as she's known, has been devoted to a plant-exclusive diet for nearly 50 years. A chef, culinary instructor, and professional speaker, she's the author of 3 best-selling books: The Secret to Ultimate Weight Loss, A Revolutionary Approach to Conquer Cravings, Overcome Food Addiction, and Lose Weight Without Going Hungry, Own Your Health, and the 10th anniversary edition of Unprocessed, and the soon-to-be-released 4th book, a cookbook devoted entirely to desserts called Sweet Indulgence. Chef AJ's culinary career started at age 7 when she received an Easy Bake Oven for Hanukkah. She moved on to be the executive pastry chef at Sante Restaurant in Los Angeles, where she was famous for her vegan, sugar, oil, salt, and gluten-free desserts, which use the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. She broadcasts her show, Chef AJ Live, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X daily. She's the creator of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, which has helped hundreds of people achieve the health and body that they deserve. And she's proud to say that her IQ is higher than her cholesterol. In 2018, she was inducted into the Vegetarian Hall of Fame. I'm proud to say that this badass mother is my good friend. Please help me welcome Chef AJ.
Now the roles reverse, because I've been interviewing you for years monthly on Chef AJ Live, Plant-Based Classics, and now you're going to actually make me talk today.
I know. I was thinking about that. I was like, I don't think she's going to relinquish control very easily. I'm waiting for you to start interviewing me. So you have been plant exclusive for 40 something years.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about you, and I was rereading, Unprocessed, your story in Unprocessed. And, you know, you're so upbeat and phenomenal. And I forget, you really had some tough times. Like you got off to a rough start in life.
I did.
Can you, tell a little bit about, your early life?
So depressing.
It's a little depressing, but it also brings us to where you are.
Yeah. So I don't know. I had my father was, kicked in the head by a horse. And I say that because I think that accounted for a lot of his violent behavior. I didn't know him before that incident, so I can't really vouch for what he was like. But when I talked to neurologists today, he didn't have brain scans or MRIs. They said that, that kind of injury, it was visible too, because he had this big gash in his head, like Frankenstein. Like it wasn't just like a little kick. It was like he was really kicked in the head by a horse. They said that can make a person, violent. And so, I think part of it, maybe he had a disagreeable personality to begin with, and it just intensified it. So yeah, there was a lot of, violence in the first 11 years of my life. And I really never disclose it in my books. I kind of give what Glenn Mercer says, the Disney version of my childhood, because it's not, my job to depress the reader. I do talk about it to people if I feel it would help them. But mainly it was just that, you can still have a rough start in life. You can have a rough life and still, succeed in certain areas, and maybe in all areas. But the reason I did that specifically for my weight loss book is after working with so many people on weight loss, a lot of them have had trauma and negative experiences, but so have people that don't have weight problems. That's what people don't seem to understand. And it was pointed out to me by Dr. Doug Lisle that, there are actually more overweight men in the world statistically than women, and they have not necessarily had trauma. And so I'm not diminishing trauma in any way. I think people should get trauma therapy if they are suffering from past trauma, but that's not the reason you are overweight today for most people. It has to do with the food.
The food. But so when your dad left, you ended up living with some aunts. Your mom had to go to work. And so that part, tell about that part a little bit.
Yeah, that was a happy ending, actually, until my mom came and took me back. No, I'm just kidding. So I was very blessed. The thing is you don't always know at 11 years old that what is happening is the best for you, because even though it was a horrible childhood, you still don't want to leave your parents because it's scary, flying halfway across the country to live with an aunt and uncle, even though they were my favorite aunt and uncle, it was scary. And my aunt was amazing. She was born and raised in Switzerland, and she was the most loving, kind person I had ever met. And we lived with her, my uncle, my two boy cousins that were a little bit older than me. And they were like, more like brothers to me than my brothers who, because when there's trauma and abuse in a family, sometimes the siblings can really bind together and love and support each other. And sometimes they all forego to their separate corners of the world. And that's kind of what happened in my family. So having my boy cousins, Phil and Paul, that was a wonderful experience because they were jokesters. They would tease me, but it was nothing like the childhood that I had in Chicago. But what was the coolest thing about living there, one of the coolest things, is my aunt's mother, her name was Blanche, but they called her May. I think maybe that was, they spoke French in the house, so I had to learn French pretty quick to keep up. And she was a Cordon Bleu chef. She had a 5-star restaurant in Switzerland. And so she did all the cooking in the family because my uncle was a medical doctor and he worked, and my aunt was raising the kids. And so May made every single meal, and every meal, it was like literally eating at a French restaurant every single night. There was no recipes. May didn't speak English, so I couldn't really say, what are you doing? How are you doing that? But I could watch. And she would go to, I don't know if they had farmers market in 1971 like they have now, where you can go buy stuff, but she would go to the best store that we had in that area, which was called Gelson's. There's still a few left in Southern California. And she would buy the ingredients like leeks, and she would just make, without recipes, just amazing meals that most people don't eat in their whole life, but especially when you're 11, like leeks with I can't even explain, these sauces, and things with Gruyere cheese and fondues and soufflé au grand marnier and nègres en chemise. The food was, that's probably pretty high in fat. It wasn't vegan, but it was amazing. And what was interesting is my aunt was never overweight, and neither was her mother. And yet they were able to eat this rich food because, they weren't eating processed food. That was one thing I noticed. They did have it in the house, for their boys. There was Nestle Crunch in the pantry, and there were cereals, but they did not eat any processed food, my aunt. What was interesting is they had the salad after the meal. And that was, I guess, a palate cleanser, which is real interesting because, if you're teaching people calorie density, you want to have the salad first to kind of fill up. But my aunt made the best salad dressing, and I never could get the recipe from her, not because she wouldn't give it, because that whole family cooked without recipes. She just took the vinegar, took the oil, took this. That's how they all cooked. And that's kind of how I like to cook today. That's how I prefer to cook. But people always want exact recipes. And I'm like, no, just learn that way. It's so much better because then you don't have to worry if you don't have enough of the ingredients. I don't know the word for cooking like that, maybe improvisational, but that was the best. So I could see her making she would make a pear galette, and, she would use, real butter, not this fake, margarine or oil, but they did use real butter, and, but she could just craft things. And it was just to me, it was the funnest thing in the world. We didn't have food TV back then, but it was sort of like watching it. And I think if I have good qualities for that, I think it's because they were instilled in me by my aunt. I loved my Aunt Ramon. It's just more than anyone.
So you went from obese to anorexic to obese, blah, blah. So what was the rock bottom, and then how did you pull yourself out of that?
Well, there was a lot of rock bottoms. So I'll talk about my rock bottom with my weight, though. It really wasn't, I just assumed that. I mean, well, first of all, it is genetic. It's very how heavy or lean you are on any given diet. That is genetic, and it's like Dr. Lyle talks about how 80% of your weight is heritable. But it's the other 20% that we have control of, our diet, our lifestyle, whether we exercise or not, those kind of things. And so because everybody in my family was obese or morbidly obese, I just thought I was doing pretty good, only weighing, about 180 pounds at 5'6" instead of weighing, like more than 200 or 300, like other people in my family of similar heights. So I just accepted that this is my lot in life, that this was my set point, because no matter what I did, my weight would always come back to at least 160, 165. And so I kind of gave up, that I would ever, be slender without having to use drugs like fen-phen, which was the Ozempic of my day, or, not eating at all, which was what I did in my teens, which I don't recommend. And then what happened is shortly before I think it was my 50th birthday, I fell. I slipped in an office building, and it was caught on camera. It was a person mopping, didn't put the sign, and I had this really horrific break in my left knee. And so, of course, I went to the emergency room. It was a really, really bad break, and I was too fat for crutches. I just couldn't use them. I could not, carry that much weight, and I couldn't use a walker. So I had to be in a wheelchair for 4 months because I just didn't have the upper body strength, and I had too much weight to do anything. And so it was just I don't like people taking care of me in that aspect. And I just, didn't like that I couldn't take care of my own needs of what they call them ADL, activities of daily living, my own going to the bathroom, showering. And I felt humiliated and embarrassed. And I said, okay, because I had heard from one of the orthopedic doctors said, hey, did you know that every pound you're overweight is like 10 pounds of pressure to your knee? Have you ever thought about losing weight? And I thought, I felt like saying, no, I haven't. Really? But it did kind of stick with me when he said that, because I didn't realize that having this extra weight, it wasn't just like a visual thing, that I was disgusted with myself. It actually was impacting my ability to live my life and do my job. And at the time I was a pastry chef at a restaurant, a vegan pastry chef, which, by the way, like if you're a food addict, I don't recommend being in the baking business, but I didn't know about it quite back then. And so that's kind of what happened is I'm like, okay, well, now I got to figure this out, and I got to figure out a way that's sustainable, because fen-phen is not sustainable. Plus, it was taken off the market by the FDA. Anorexia is not sustainable. And so it was going to the True North Health Center in January of 2011 and meeting Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer that I finally understood what was sustainable, not just for optimal health, but for weight loss, which was calorie density. And by the way, I didn't invent calorie density. I mean, Dr. Dean Ornish had written a best-selling book in 1980 based in the principles of calorie density called Eat More, Weigh Less. And Dr. McDougall also had a best-selling book called the McDougall Program for Maximum Weight Loss. And the thing is up until Audible, I never read a book. And so I had these books probably, but I didn't read it. But having Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer there, because they lectured there every week, when it was explained to me kind of like in a classroom kind of fashion with a PowerPoint and the ability to ask questions, it was like, like Oprah says, a light bulb moment. And it's like, wow, you really can eat more and weigh less. And that's why people that really will commit to this and just put the nuts and the seeds and the avocado and the tofu and the oil aside just for like 30 days or even 3 weeks, I've never not seen it work. And, people vary in the sensitivity of their stretch receptors. Satiety is based on a few things: calories, nutrients, and stretch. And so there are people like my husband, that's like that movie, Life of Brian. He can eat like one little cookie. He's like, I'm so full. And there's people like me, and you know who you are, that need more gas in the tank just to activate our stretch receptors. Mm-hmm. I think it's genetic, and maybe a discordant history of dieting might have played a factor, but I do think it's largely genetic. And so I can't weigh and measure my food and eat skimpy little portions. I need a lot of food. So like my lunch is always like, I don't know, like 2.5 pounds. They say that most people, Barbara Rolls, who's done the most research in calorie density at Penn State University, where she studies human eating behavior in her lab, she says most humans, adult humans, for sure, eat about 3 to 5 pounds of food a day. And so some people are on the lower end, some on the higher end. And so I need more volume in order to feel full. And so this is what's so great to me is that, I can eat big volumes of food and maintain a slender weight. And whereas before I was eating very calorically dense food and not really eating that much food, which means I not only was overweight, but I was also hungry because I wasn't eating enough food.
Well, can you explain that a little bit? So first of all, calorie density and that kind of thing. And well, just explain the theory of that. But also, we're talking about a whole food plant-based diet. So if people don't know that, it's legumes, so beans, peas, lentils, whole grains like brown rice and oats and quinoa, things like that, fruits, vegetables, a little bit of nuts, a little bit of seeds.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And no oil. But so explain about calorie density a little bit.
So there's a book called Volumetrics that Dr. Barbara Rolls wrote. And that is when I finally started understanding it. It's funny because I paid $1 for the book. It was at one of those used bookstores. And boy, did that change my life because she had photos in the book and I can learn better when I see, that's why I love these. That's why probably I learned calorie density better at True North because they were doing PowerPoints and it's like, oh, here's a picture. And she had pictures in her book. And for example, she said for the same amount of calories and a quarter cup of raisins, you could have 2 cups of grapes. What is going to fill you up more? And she had a lot of these kind of comparisons in her book. So calorie density, which actually the doctors often call it energy density, it's the same thing. It simply means calories per pound of food. And people say, well, I don't eat a pound of food. Well, of course you do. You eat several pounds of food a day. You may not eat a pound of a given food at a time, although I do. I easily eat a pound of potatoes every serving and a pound of fruit when I eat fruit or a pound of vegetables. But people need to understand that food varies in calorie density, calories per pound, from about 100 calories per pound on the low end, which are vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and 4,000 calories per pound on the high end, which is oil, all oil, whether it's flax, avocado, olive oil, coconut oil. And so there's a 40-fold difference in the calorie density of food. And if people are wanting to lose weight, if they simply change the average calorie density of the foods they're eating to what I call foods to the left of the red line, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, they can eat twice as much food and take in half as many calories. The problem is most Americans eat what I call to the right of the red line. They're eating animal products. They're eating processed sugar, processed flour, oils, and that's the problem. Now, the thing is it's not that you can never have nuts and seeds or avocado. I eat avocado. I eat some seeds. I try not to eat nuts very often, but you just have to be mindful of their caloric density because they're about 3,000 calories per pound for the nuts and seeds. And so, for 300 calories per pound, I could have a pound of oatmeal, right? So once you don't have to memorize how many calories in a cup of blueberries or half a cup of rice, like Weight Watchers would have you do. You just have to know vegetables are about 100 calories per pound. Fruits about 200 to 300 calories per pound. Oatmeal and things like potatoes and sweet potatoes, they're about 300 to 400 calories per pound. Whole grains, about 500 calories per pound. And legumes, beans, split peas, lentils, 550 to 600 calories per pound. And the winter squashes are actually only about 200 calories per pound. And so if you concentrate on getting most of your calories from these foods, you can eat what's called ad libitum. That doesn't mean you can't have a slice of avocado on your salad or, a quarter of an avocado or an ounce of nuts. It's just, you've got to be mindful of the varying caloric densities. Also, when it comes to processed foods like sugar, like flour, like oil, there's no fiber. And, people always worry about where vegans are going to get their protein. I wonder where everybody else in the world is getting their fiber, because most people in the world don't get enough fiber. And the thing about fiber, it's not just enormously helpful for so many things. It flushes toxins and waste out of the body. It binds to cholesterol. But where weight loss and satiety is concerned, fiber is the key to the kingdom, because it's what makes you feel full on virtually no calories. And when you have fiber in food plus water in food, fiber and water together create bulk, and that's what creates satiety. So like you could have dried fruit and it still has fiber, but it has no water, and you could have juice and it has water, but it has no fiber. So you want to not only just eat whole food, but you want to eat it in its whole food form so that every bite that goes in your mouth has the fiber and water intact. And calorie density will help you do that because water dilutes the overall caloric density of the food. And so does fiber. And you can't just like eat a bunch of peanuts and then drink water. It's not how it works. You have to have the water in the food as nature intended. That's why soups can be so helpful for both satiety and weight loss. And by soups, I mean vegetable or bean-based soups, not like New England clam chowder.
Yeah. Right. Like tomato soup with cream. Yeah. Like your aunt probably made, but
absolutely.
That's right. But okay, so that's really in a nutshell. And when you were saying to the left and to the right of the red line, just so people understand, like you have a chart, and on the left side is all the things that you can eat pretty freely. That's why you were saying to the left of the red line, the legumes, the whole grains, the fruits and vegetables, and then a red line. And then to the right of that, you have the things like the nuts and the seeds and the avocado and the oil and things that you wouldn't eat so freely. So that's kind of how I guess you got yourself under control, because you had quite, like I said, we were talking about, I know you don't want to kind of dwell on the bad part of your life, but I mean, but I think that it's helpful for people to understand, that all the things that you went through, because I mean, is it okay if I talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because my adult life was hard too. I mean, I lost 4 babies, right. And I mean, they weren't, fully, I mean, they weren't, grown babies, but it's still devastating. Like when you're like right about to give birth and your baby dies. And so to me, that's, fetal loss is not, unless you have like a corpse, then they say, well, it wasn't a baby. But the thing is when a baby dies inside of you like that, they can't always give it to you. It's just, yes. I don't want to get graphic here with surgeries, but it's not like it's a little bit different what they have to do sometimes in emergency surgery situations to save the mother. And so basically I lost 4 children. And
absolutely,
that was really hard. And the thing is, the thing that was really hard is that, like I said, unless you have a funeral and a corpse, it's like, well, it wasn't a real baby. But the minute you're pregnant, it's a real baby.
Of course.
So yeah, that's something that was really hard. And I still, you do the best you can. You hopefully find the expert that can help you with that. So yeah, I mean, life is hard. And
but the part, so I know one of your babies you named Rachel, and you said that you really didn't grieve her until I found this. So until you gave up like not only sugar, but like maple syrup and agave. And then all of a sudden you started, what was the connection to that?
I remember when I was teaching at a cooking school in LA called Dick and Jane Cook Vegetarian. Thank you, Ryan Flegel, for giving me my start even before Dr. McDougall as a culinary instructor. And so one of the teachers there, and I can't even remember his name. I think he might have been the chef at the time at Real Food Daily. And so in the cooking classes, we would present, like an entree and then another course, like a salad or a soup and a dessert. That was like kind of what the thing was. And I was a teacher there. So I went to his class, and he was, I think it was a macrobiotic chef. And so his dessert was something called Canton. I think it was like Jello, right? And it's like, I'm like, Jello? What kind of like Jello? Jello isn't like, and I'm like,
that's not a dessert.
That's not a dessert. And,
that's
he was explaining
in the hospital.
Exactly. And he was explaining macrobiotic principles and not using sugar. And, and he said something to me. He says, boy, I told him, and he said, sounds to me like you're using sugar to compensate for the lack of sweetness in your life. And I just thought about that and like it, but then the more I thought about it, the more he was right. So I was using food, in general, sugary foods. And it's not just sugary foods, it's sugar fatty foods. Because let's face it, how many sugar addicts do you know that their only problem is like Jolly Ranchers or Twizzlers? Right. It's always the sugar and the fat, guys. Let's be real. Mm-hmm. And right. To compensate for the lack of sweetness. And like when at the time he said that, I kind of thought, what a dope. And then, after I gave up sugar, I'm like, oh boy, now what? That was not fun. That was a bad week.
But you said it helped you grieve after that. Like what was the tie into that?
No, I had to feel my feelings because if you're using anything as a drug, it blocks, your ability to feel your feelings deeply. And I think that's why so many people use food, alcohol, drugs, real drugs as drugs, over exercising, overworking, because then it's running away from your feelings. So yeah, that was profound when people say, well, I'm not an addict, or whatever it is, I say, okay, well, just go without it for a week and then you tell me. Yeah, because they can't. You can't. That's how you know you're an addict. A lot of addicts can't go without it one day or even one meal, whatever their drug of choice is.
Well, okay. So this brings me to, I want to talk about your book that's coming out. So it's coming out. I think this is going to hopefully air August 22nd, and your book comes out on the 27th. So if you are hearing this, you have to pre-order this book. What do you get when you pre-order this book?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I always say to people, if you're going to order it, please pre-order it. And the reason is when, in order to be what's called a New York Times bestseller, it's the pre-orders that count. And pre-orders are any orders that come in through a multiple of places such as Amazon, Barnes and Noble, small independent bookstores, and the first 5 days a book comes out. So if my book's coming out Tuesday, August 27th, midnight Pacific time on August 31st, any purchases after that will still be nice, but they won't help me qualify to be a New York Times bestseller. And when a vegan or a plant-based book does well, I think the whole veganism movement does well, because more publishers will be publishing more vegan books because they see that there is a market for it. And this book is not just a vegan book, although it is. It's a gluten-free book. It's a sugar-free book. Everything is sweetened with fruit. But to give people an extra incentive to please pre-order it, we've spent 6 months creating over $1,000 worth of virtual bonuses that if you buy your book from any of the places and to a special website, it's called Sweet Indulgence.
I'll put it in the notes.
We will send you virtually a video of every single recipe in the book. And there's over 150 recipes and a few other bonuses too, like my Sweet Indulgence Masterclass that when people took it's 18 hours of classes. It sold for $497. Another class I did with Lissa Maris called Make It Raw, Make It Cooked, and the audio files of my last book on unprocessed. So the bonuses are worth more than the book. And the book is beautiful. The photos by our mutual friend, Hannah Kaminsky, are just, that's why, people want a Kindle, but it's like, I almost wish we didn't have a Kindle because it's a coffee table book. If this book is art, and just looking at it on your phone is not going to do these photos justice.
No, it's absolutely gorgeous. And so this is what I want people to understand about this book, is that you are a sugar addict, so you're not using sugar. These are desserts. These are gorgeous, fabulous desserts that you would bring to your friend's house, and that you don't have to say it's vegan, it's sugar-free. Nobody would know, and everybody would be like, this is the best dessert. And it's healthy for you. As far as desserts go, but I'm just going to name off a few of these things, like cookies. You have a cookie section, oatmeal raisins, snickerdoodles, thumbprints.
You have thumbprints.
Oh, I love thumbprints. Cupcakes. You have cinnamon bun cupcakes, peanut butter stuffed chocolate cupcakes with chocolate ganache. That's the cover. I know, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's one of most of the recipes are easy. That one is probably, I would say, the most difficult recipe in the book, because you're going to need a pastry. You need to pipe it. You got to. Well, actually, no. You could just plop it on top. But what we did is, I don't eat every single dessert recipe in that book. They're just too rich for me right now. But these are recipes that I created when I was the pastry chef many years ago at Santé Restaurant. And so we try to have something for everybody. In other words, we have some of the, people say, well, what if you're following Dr. Esselstyn? I would say that at least 75% of the recipes in the book are low fat, the way I eat now. So if somebody was doing Esselstyn, Ornish, McDougall, or Pritikin, you could have those recipes.
And those are very low fat, vegan.
Low fat, low calorie density.
Everything is oil free also.
Absolutely. And salt free, and only 2 recipes with flour. And what we did, and this was the brilliant idea of Janine Elder, who has her own book called Potato Wisdom. And she designed the book so that there is a chart, or I should say a grid, in every single recipe. It's labeled with 1, 2, or 3 strawberries to indicate the level of
the sweetness.
It's either subtly sweet, nice and sweet, or what's the third one? Subtly sweet,
rich and decadent.
Yeah, exactly.
No, they're all. Oh man, I'm just looking at these. These look so good. I'm sorry, it's a podcast.
Yeah, I know. We do the same thing with the level of fat, whether it's low fat, moderate fat, or rich and decadent. So that way you can pick and choose how much fat you want and how much sweetness you want. You know, for people that are really, really sugar
here's
addicts,
the whole low fat.
Right. There are some recipes in there. If you're just, eating the standard American diet, you're probably not going to like, I'm trying to think one that's pretty low in fat, the apple pie rice pudding. It's not going to be sweet enough for you because there's not even dates in there. But like Lauren said, the cupcake on the cover, the German chocolate cake, the peanut butter chocolate cheesecake, these are really rich desserts that were served in a restaurant that wasn't even vegan. And I didn't tell them that I was not using refined sugar as a sweetener. So
it's like, I'm looking at this butterscotch pie right now. That looks, look at that.
Well, that's low calorie density.
I mean, can I say, like, the crust is 2 cups of gluten-free rolled oats, and it has cinnamon, vanilla bean powder. It has dates. Yeah. And then butterscotch pudding that you give the recipe for, and then you can top it with strawberries or raspberry. So that's like, I mean, as far as
it's actual food. Most of the recipes are actual food.
Exactly.
Yeah. So flour and sugar aren't food,
Right. I know. I hate that, but that's true. Yeah. I don't want that to be true.
But here's the thing. That's the thing. It's like calorie density. That's why whether you've had trauma or not, calorie density is impersonal. It's basically just math. And what people need to know, and I think this will make them feel a lot better if they read a book like The Pleasure Trap, is that the fact that you seek the most calorically concentrated foods in your environment does not mean you're flawed in any way. It just means that you are just doing what you were genetically designed to do. Exactly. We seek the most concentrated source of calories in any environment you're in, whether it's your home or anywhere else. That's what our ancestors did to survive. And so, of course, we like sugar and flour because they're 1,800 and 1,500 calories per pound, whereas fruit and vegetables are 100, 200, and 300 calories per pound. But remember, sugar and flour did not exist in nature. Either did oil throughout most of human history. But, the problem isn't us, it's the environment that we live in. If you go back to, like, I forget, what are they called? But there's a couple hunter-gatherer tribes left in the world. Is it the Hadza? I'm sorry, I can't remember the name.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, like they're not eating Snickers, they're not vegan. Of course not. They're not vegan, but they're not eating oil or sugar or flour or salt. They're eating actual food like our ancestors did. The good news is that, you can learn to love whole natural food at a low caloric density if you are willing to abstain from those higher caloric density pleasure trap foods for a while. But it's hard because for many people, that means not going to restaurants because, good luck. You have Casa de Luz, and we have a couple of vegan restaurants here that can do SOS free, but restaurants aren't interested in your health. And if you tell them no oil, they'll either laugh at you or just, say it's not possible. And people don't realize the impact of just a little bit of oil, not just on their arterial health, but on their waistline. And I'll tell you, that's the biggest tip or trick you can give for weight loss is whether you're vegan or not, just stop the oil. You don't need it. It doesn't make food taste better.
I know it. You know what? You get used to not eating oil, and then it tastes terrible. But like, I went to Chinese last night, and I just got steamed rice and steamed vegetables, and it was good. I mean, it's good to me just because I'm used to it. I know most people would be like,
they're like, it's
great.
So
what do I need that for?
Well, that's why California balsamic was created.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. You just sprinkle a little of that on there. It's delicious.
And then it's delicious. Yeah.
Well, so why do you think and you mentioned The Pleasure Trap. That's a great book if anybody wants to read that. But why do you think that a whole food plant-based diet helps you to age well? I mean, in addition to keeping your weight down.
Yeah. And now you got me thinking that you got to interview Dr. Goldhammer. He would be a fun guest. And boy, he has aged amazing because he has been vegan longer than me, but he has been healthy vegan the whole time. I don't think there's one wrinkle on his face anywhere. So I think, like I said, just whether it's your weight or how you age, I think most of it is genetics. But the thing about the food you eat is it determines how well you age. I don't think it necessarily determines how long you live necessarily, but it determines whether or not you age well or with debility, especially for things that are preventable. like many of these lifestyle diseases, like type 2 diabetes, like heart disease, like certain autoimmune conditions. And so I think that's where food really helps, but also other lifestyle behaviors too, like whether or not you exercise, whether or not you smoke, whether or not you drink alcohol. People don't realize that these things can visibly age you. Not exercising can visibly age you. Smoking, if you have a smoking history or currently smoke, that visibly ages you. People think alcohol is just so great, but I used to be an activity director at a retirement home, and some people drank and some people didn't. And I don't know, like the correlation between the drinkers and the wrinklers, that was pretty much the same.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
That's what I saw.
Interesting to know.
So
the drinkers and the wrinklers.
Yeah, the drinkers were the wrinklers, so.
Oh, wow. Well, can you share your age with us?
Yeah, I'll be 65 at my next birthday, and I cannot wait because I want Medicare so bad. My health insurance is so expensive.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
What do you love about being this age?
Ugh.
Okay, what do you don't love about being this age?
Okay, I guess what I love is that I don't have to go through those painful things that I love not having a menstrual cycle. I tell you that's like great, but I didn't have one since I was 47. I love that I get in cheaper to the movies. That's good. What else? Not much. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I love that. Oh, that's funny.
Oh gosh, you're hilarious.
My uncle who I lived with my Swiss aunt, he used to say getting old is not for sissies. And I didn't really know what that meant when I was, a teenager. And even my mom said getting old sucks. And I'm like, there wasn't really a context until you get older. That doesn't mean life can't be wonderful, but you can't control things that are happening in your body. Oh, here's another tip. This is my best anti-aging tip for everyone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, stay out of the sun. Now wait, let me clarify that. I don't mean that you shouldn't go outside and get your vitamin D, but protect yourself. Because there are people like I get bashed all the time on other people's like social media and say how terrible I look, but I think my skin. I think the skin on my face actually looks pretty good for my age. I mean, because you can see the skin on my hands. They don't.
Well, we all have that,
right? But here's the thing. So I'm not saying that you should never go outside in your sun. But I mean, like when I look at people that are 10 years older than me that look amazing, like Victoria Moran, I said to her, she'd be a great one too for this topic.
I did. I interviewed her already.
Well, anyway, I remember her telling me she doesn't let sun on her face, and I never thought anything about it. Living in LA most of my life, but then when I moved to the desert. I saw a dermatologist because like you sometimes just see one once a year, like they send you, like a skin check. And he just basically read me the riot act. My skin was in really bad shape. I had these horrible spots all over. They ended up burning off that were really painful. And, he basically said, because they see so much skin cancer there, he said, you cannot get your face in the sun like ever again. And I took that very seriously. This was before the pandemic. And I bought one of those full coverage hats like that look like where all you can see is your eyes and you have sunglasses. Yeah. And so I go outside every day. I walk my dog for at least an hour and it's sunny. I don't use sunscreen on my arms and legs, but my face has 70 sunscreen, a full coverage hat, sunglasses. I have not knowingly let sun on my face now for almost 6 years. I think that ages you more than anything is sun.
Oh, absolutely. That's good advice. I've been putting sunblock on my hands for years, and I think that's been really helpful.
I should have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you learn about aging from watching your parents age?
Well, here's the other thing. They were so much older when I was born. My dad was 50, so.
I mean, this could be good or bad. I'm going to guess it's going to be bad.
Well, it's funny because, I don't even know what this word means, but everything that happened, my father would say, well, that's just the vagaries of old age. So I learned that basically you get old, you get sick, you die, whereas, other people that they do die, but they don't necessarily die of a long and lingering illness the way my father did with heart disease, or my mother did with dementia, or my grandmother did with diabetes, or my grandfather did, with cancer. So I did not see people that were aging well, but they also weren't eating well.
Right. Do you ever go to concerts? Do you have a favorite concert that you ever went to?
Let me think about that. I like comedy shows better than Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yes. So actually, when I lived in the desert, I lived near Fantasy Springs. So I saw Bill Medley. I saw America. I saw Diana Krall. I saw Tony Bennett. I tend to like more my parents' music than my own.
Yeah.
I tend to like that kind of music. I don't like loud, blaring. Like a rap. I like kind of smooth. I'm a smooth jazz. Oh gosh, I wish I could see Gregory Porter in concert. And people don't know about him. He's like,
I don't know who that is.
You've got to ask Alexa to play him. This guy is like the most amazing jazz singer. And apparently he's from Sacramento. But I like, I just saw, oh my God, he was fantastic. 90 years old, Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go see him, I think. Yeah.
He was amazing. So yeah, I do like that kind of stuff. I just don't go often because, it takes effort. It takes money and it takes effort. And there's just, I don't love large crowds all the time,
That's what I thought about you. Yeah. I was thinking that.
If I had a wish, it would be like Disneyland would just open for me and a few friends. Like, because I love Disneyland, but it's like the experience. It's just, there's so many people. Wouldn't that be cool if like I had all this money and I could say, okay, just stay open for about 8 hours. I'm just going to I'll have my closest like 99 friends and then, not having to wait in line for the rides. Wouldn't that be so cool?
That'd be amazing. You have to get this book, Sweet Indulgence. I'll put it in the show notes. Take a look at it. It's fabulous. If you love dessert, you will love this, whether you're vegan or not. Just take a look at it. All right. I love you, Chef AJ. You take care.
Thank you, Lauren. And if you don't love dessert, get it for somebody who does.
Oh, that's a good idea. And that's another good idea. A perfect gift. Save it up for Christmas or Hanukkah or birthday.
And if people buy more than one copy, people are saying, well, if I buy a copy for somebody else, can they have the virtual bonuses? Sure. You just have to give a different email with each receipt. But of course.
Okay. I'll put it all in the show notes. All right. Well, you take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.